Teri, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Emma. This is such a pleasure.
A little bit about your career story. How did you get to be where you are today? Take us on the
Wow.
journey. Talk us through
That
it.
is a journey, that's for sure. Well, growing up, I grew up with a single mom, me and my sister. So I knew we didn't have a lot of money growing up. We shopped one day, 1 year at Kmart for clothes and hand-me-downs from my cousin. And so I knew we didn't have a lot of money. So finding a job it was a job. It was never about, like what's your purpose or passion or anything like that. It was just get a job to pay bills. And I literally stumbled into HR taking a temp assignment at Time Warner Cable. It was supposed to be a 2-day data entry and ended up being 2.5 years. And you fast forward, 10 years in HR. And I just realized that one day I woke up and I'm like, there's got to be something more to this. And especially after going through a toxic workplace, I realized a lot of people don't have resources because I didn't have resources in this situation because I was being bullied by an executive team and I was the only HR person and I didn't have a resource. So this book came out of really kind of like literally a survival guide to help others because I knew I was not alone in this journey that others needed a resource that feel like they didn't have one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd imagine when you're in that situation, particularly as someone who works in HR, there's almost that double layer to it because
Yep,
you're the HR person. You're the person that people would probably normally go to for
exactly.
support. And yet you're the person in that situation.
It was very surreal because I've done thousands of investigations of complaints of, harassment or toxic workplace or whatever. And sitting on this, one side being HR and having these conversations, but then being on the other side was like, oh my God, like this is a whole nother level of an experience that I never knew how bad it could be because it can be very isolating. It can make you feel like you're crazy. It can make you feel like you're not competent depending on the situation. And it's really hard for people to come forward. So it made me really appreciate and empathize more with those that do come forward that feel that something is wrong and to have the courage to do that. But when you're in HR, it was actually very jarring because to be
Yeah.
experiencing it personally and being in HR it was just very nerve wracking.
How did that situation come to be? Was it one particular individual? Was it a broader kind of culture within the organization?
Uh,
If you don't mind,
yeah, it was
hopefully not too
actually,
traumatic
it was
to talk through
basically
some of
the
it.
Mean Girls group is what happened.
Mm,
And I was just literally, they would gang up on me. They would find things to accuse me of not doing right or, like I hadn't done my job or I was incompetent or I didn't know what I was doing. And for 3 months, I went through this and I just realized that there's no way I'm going to convince these people otherwise. Like they have an agenda and it doesn't matter what I say or do, they're never going to change their mind. So I just decided to leave because I didn't have another option. And I'm not a proponent for just leave your job if you're unhappy, but my mental health was really struggling. And I got to the point where I just have to step out and have faith that there's something else better out there. And that's when I started thinking like, I need to write down what I went through. And it was actually very cathartic to be able to write down and help people realize you are not alone and that you are not crazy and that regardless of whatever happened to you, I want to validate that you have every reason to feel the way you feel.
mm. And as you said there, I think there's a huge difference between I'm unhappy. There's a situation that's a little bit challenging, but
Yes.
maybe I can see a way that it's going to resolve itself versus,
Yes.
feeling like you're being bullied or, some
Yes.
very serious issue that you cannot see being resolved. They're two
Yes.
very different ends of the
The
ends of
spectrum.
the
Yes.
spectrum.
Yeah, everybody's worked with a manager that is difficult or like they just seem like they're incompetent and, the Peter principles high and dry, they're just so out of their depth of what they're doing. And, we always have those people and I've complained about them, but this is a different level of where, you literally have a visceral experience. I have an upset stomach, headache going to work, and I dreaded going to work. Those are the symptoms that this isn't just a dysfunctional place. Like if you were having physical symptoms, regardless if you try to keep pushing yourself forward, your body keeps score, and literally you're stuffing that down, trying to justify and rationalize it. Your body can only take so much, and it'll tell you enough is enough.
It's so interesting, isn't it? And there must be some sort of, I don't know, evolutionary psychological reason for it. But so often in that situation, we do exactly what you said there. We try to rationalize, we try
Yes.
to justify, we try to play it down. We blame ourselves even. And,
Exactly.
well, it must be me. There must be something I'm doing. And yeah, it seems to be a very common reaction in that scenario.
Unfortunately, that's human nature, is that there's something that happens out of the ordinary. The brain does not like unknown or something that's out of repetition. So if you see some odd behavior or somebody saying something, usually the brain will be like, okay, I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt. They're just having a bad day, like rationalize and justifying somebody's behavior. And then over time, do you want to expose yourself and be the one that says something? Now you're running the risk of being ostracized or being the target of that, whatever abuse is happening or whatever is happening in that workplace. And basically that goes back to human nature too, is we are very much packed people. Like we want to be accepted. That's how we survived, is that we stuck together as a group. That's how you were protected. And if you were outcasted from the group, that basically was a death sentence. So it's still ingrained in our brain that you do what you need to do to survive. And your body literally goes into survival mode, and you will rationalize and justify even the worst things that happen. And that's why people end up normalizing dysfunctional behavior, because everyone as a collective has agreed that this is now normal.
Yeah, there is a really interesting graphic in your book, the triangle,
The toxic triangle. Yes.
Yeah, and part of that is I guess the response of the majority, or what can feel like the majority of people that kind of normalize it, that make it feel like it's
the
okay.
Followers.
Yeah,
The followers and the
that was really
colluders.
interesting.
Yeah, so you need three variables. You need the person that's toxic. You need a culture that has zero accountability. And then you have the followers, willing or unwilling. So you have people that collude with the leader, that are in on it. Maybe they have favoritism, or maybe they think that's fun, this behavior that's occurring, like they're getting something out of it. And then followers will follow just out of the sense of survival. Like I'm going to keep my head down, fly under the radar. I'm just going to ignore it. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to stick my neck out. I don't want that to happen to me. So that's why it's so difficult to get rid of toxic behavior, is that it's not just one person, it's several different variables. And that means everybody has to be held accountable. And that means the sales manager that's making a lot of money, you can't excuse his bad behavior anymore. You have to hold him accountable just as everybody else.
Yeah, it's so funny that that's the example that you sort of naturally go to, because it is often the case, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
I worked in recruitment for many years, and that is, such a trite in recruitment. There's always that one really toxic salesperson who treats everyone terribly, but guess what? They make a lot of money.
Yep,
So
the lone wolf.
their behavior gets excused, and everyone goes, "Oh, don't worry about so and so. That's just them." And
yeah,
like, okay.
Yeah, and you're scratching your head like, how is this acceptable? But then everyone makes you sound like you're crazy. Like, why are you upset about it? That's just the way he is. And it's like, that's not normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as we're talking about it, I have a very specific picture in my mind of that scenario and that person, actually. But we'll move on from that.
I know.
The other thing, or many things actually, but one thing that struck me sort of early on in the book, you're talking about statistics, and quite interesting statistics about people talking about their own organizations and the percentage of people who would label their own culture as toxic. It's unbelievably high.
Yes. So I think it's like over 52%, even CEOs, and like 1 in 3 employees would say it's dysfunctional or toxic in one way or another. And that's where the disconnect comes, is that you have organizations that'll do surveys and all kinds of other stuff, engagement questions or whatever, but how honest are people being? Because culture really is a living, breathing organism beyond whatever you have posted on a, your lunch board or whatever, saying this is our values, this is our mission statement. It is how you interact and the behaviors that are projected and accepted that really create the culture.
The one that really stood out to me, you mentioned it there, was the CEOs. I think it was 52%. And I was reading that thinking, you're talking about the organization that you lead. Like, you can do something about that.
But once again, it goes back to, do you want to be the person that sticks your neck out and say, hey, especially if you report to a board, or at a group. And that's the whole problem, is it really takes somebody that has a stomach and the willingness to really want to make that change. And if he doesn't have buy-in from, key stakeholders and the executives or even the board, they won't do it. Like, a perfect example is, like, say your CFO is a terrible person to work with, but he's helping the company make millions of dollars. Well, we're not going to worry about him because he's too much of an asset. We don't want to get rid of him, regardless of how toxic he is. And that's the problem. As a CEO, what is he going to do? I mean, his job could be on the line if somebody decides, because at the end of the day, a lot of it is politics and what game you play.
And incentives, I guess, as well, isn't it? Like, we're all, we're all fallible to the incentives that are at play. And if that's ultimately your job, your livelihood, your revenue stream, then perhaps you're going to act and behave differently.
Yes.
The other question I had in my head as I was reading that opening section where you're talking about, numerous studies and the prevalence, I guess, of sort of toxic workplaces. Do you think it's is it that we are experiencing more toxic workplaces, or is it that we're more aware of it, or is it kind of a combination of the two, do you think?
I think the gloves came off during COVID, and it's never gotten better in our country right now too. I think with the current culture, with the current administration, that we've now made it okay to just talk to people with absolute disrespect. Empathy is now be considered a weakness, which is very sad because it's very crucial to successful leadership. These soft skills that are in dire need are now looked at as a sign of weakness. So I think it's really a combination of a lot. But it's also organizations. Are you more focused on just the bottom dollar, or are you willing to create an organization that people thrive and are engaged? And it's study after study. I mean, highly engaged employees make you money. So I don't know why it's such a tripping point for some, but it just seems to be forgotten that employees are your asset to the success or failure of your company.
Yeah. And to your point there about COVID, I'm in Melbourne, and we were the longest lockdown city in the world.
Oh, wow.
So we had a pretty extreme COVID experience, and it does here feel like a line in the sand. I think there's a lot of kind of collective PTSD. I often use that phrase, and I think you can see it not just in the workplace, but in sort of society in general, that people just aren't that polite anymore, and kind of manners have gone out the window, and just the way people are interacting on the street, in the supermarket, whatever, has completely changed.
Yes.
It does feel very different. And then I think you layer into that working from home, and there is now, I was going to say, quite adversarial. I don't know if that's a bit dramatic. I don't think that it is actually. This quite sort of adversarial, well, we want to stay working from home, and companies are trying to get people back, and it's become this real kind of push-pull.
Yes, 100%.
Kind of hot potato
because it worked for
issue.
So long, but now you're saying that we need to have you back in. And I think what it comes back down to is that there's a lot of real estate that they own or they're renting, and there's nobody in there, and they realize that I need to put bodies back in the chair And that's where the problem is, that it's been over 3 or 4 years. I work from home. It works. I've established my life around this. And now you're
Yes.
disrupting it. So that's the challenge. Is it's a very knee-jerk reaction. It was a knee-jerk reaction to send everybody home, but we took forever to bring everybody back. So now it's the same reaction to where is the, like, 30 days is not realistic to expect people to disrupt their entire lives.
Yeah.
So why you expect people not to be upset is just, I think it's hilarious that you don't understand the enormity of how impactful that is.
I do think, though, we've lost a bit of connection probably through that. And certainly, obviously, I don't know how it is in the States. I'm talking very much for Melbourne, but I think you see it, you feel it. Certainly when I talk to people, there is more of a sense of disconnection.
Yeah.
But, as you said, it's a complex issue. There's no simple black or white answer. The answer is often the case is in the nuance. And nuance isn't very easy when you're trying to make one rule for, 5,000 people or whatever. It's quite difficult.
Yes.
But yeah, interesting that you think that's led to kind of that proliferation, and it does seem as well that a greater awareness as well, that people are perhaps expect more than maybe they used to from their workplaces in terms of the culture and how that culture supports them.
100%. The younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, they are not willing to put up with what older generations have been putting up with.
Yeah.
They want work-life balance. They want communication. They want recognition. Pay is not on the top of their list. When you look at the 5 top things, it is about the connection to the work, the meaning, the purpose, and feeling that they are being valued. And there's a lot of organizations that still don't get it, but they are willing to walk and they will not have another job lined up. 70% of them will walk without even having another job.
Yeah.
Which that blows my mind, but that's how they are so adamant about, this is what I'm going to ask for. And if I don't get it, I will leave. And I won't even wait that long to leave, less than 30 days. And that's like 1 in 3 will leave within less than 90 days. So that's even more important for organizations to realize. It's not just about toxicity. It's about the dysfunction of how you're treating your employees and what they're willing to put up with. And I commend the younger generations for doing it. I mean, we needed a disruption, and they really are challenging the norm.
Yeah. Let's move on to talk about it from the more positive standpoint, Teri. Let's talk about the positive things that you have learned from this experience, the frameworks, the guidelines that you've put into the book, and let's shine the light on the positive things that came. One thing that did really strike me, and I was just saying to you before we started recording, was although the book is about, surviving the toxic workplace and framed in that way, so much of what you talk about and the approach that you suggest struck me as life survival guide, not just work. It felt much broader than that from a mindset kind of approach.
Definitely, because when you're in a toxic workplace, you feel like you're stuck. You don't have any options. You feel, you can be depressed, anxiety, stress, you feel like your whole life is disrupted and you don't have any options. And I really wrote it to help people realize that if you really want to make a change, there are steps that you need to take. And that's why I created, self-awareness, self-control, self-care, and then self-empowerment. Because if you want to make a change, you have to go through a process. And that's what I wanted people to realize is you don't have to stay where you are, that it's not quit or find another job or stay. That there are many possibilities. You could start a side hustle. You could find something you're passionate about, a hobby you could do outside of work, maybe go back to school, get a certification, maybe, get better in Excel, whatever that is, but to find something that moves you forward. But the first step is self-awareness, to realize, what am I doing in my world that I have control over? and where do I need to hold myself accountable to changing how I'm showing up and what I'm willing to accept. And that's how you become empowered.
I love that you started from that perspective. It felt, it did feel empowering because, you know, as you said, I think you do say in the book that, yes, it's a terrible situation, but you're not a victim in that situation, even though someone may be treating you very, very badly. There's things that you can do, that you can take control of, that you can do for yourself. And it felt like a much more empowering solution. And the other thing that you just said there that really rings true, and it's something I see a lot in my work as well with my clients is, and it may not be a toxic workplace, it might just be that they feel a bit stuck. But I think when people are in those scenarios that it does become quite binary and they do see it as stay or leave, and they can't necessarily see the, as you laid out there, the myriad of other options that actually are available to them. But the situation does kind of makes you feel like it's much more narrowed down than it is.
Especially when you're stressed out because you're just in fight or flight, and that's just survival. So your prefrontal cortex is not working. You're not rational. You're not making, good decisions. You're basically functioning from the reptile brain. You're just literally just, eat, sleep, and get through the day. So that's why it becomes very narrowed and very binary, like you're saying, this one or the other. And when you go through this process, it helps you realize I need to take a step back, pause, and get back into the prefrontal cortex so I can make a decision from a rational, calm mind, not stressed out and do or say something I'm going to regret later because I was not in the right frame of mind.
How does someone do that? Like, how do they? Because you say it like it's, I just get back into my calm, rational mind.
Believe me, it's
and
not,
obviously it's a little bit more complex.
It is. It really is. Believe me.
What does that look like?
I don't mean to minimize it because I know.
No, and I wasn't suggesting you were.
I know. I know it sounds really easy, but I guess part of it really is the first step is really just taking a step back and saying, okay, where do I have agency right now? Where do I have control over what's happening? And that's how I respond, how I react to what's happening around me. And that's the awareness. So what part can I change, either how I react or how I have autonomy or agency over my job, and focus on where basically it's the circle of influence. Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about the circle of concern versus the circle of influence. So many people spend so much time, 90% of is the circle of concern. We have no control over it. And where you need to realize is writing down, what do I have control over? And number one is how I choose to show up and respond to whatever's happening to me. And if you can list where you do have control, then you start feeling like you have a little bit more empowerment of what's happening. You're not giving up your power to everybody because you're focusing on something that's never going to change. And that's important to realize is letting go of what you can't control and focusing on what you can control.
I think that is, and to my earlier point about it feeling like, life lessons, not just toxic.
No, it is.
Lessons.
Yeah.
I think that is such a key, such a critical point to make. And as you say in the book, there are so many parts of life that feel like they're coming at us in a very kind of full-on manner at the moment, whether it's, the news cycle or social media or just kind of everything. And I think taking that very conscious decision to not get pulled into, to not get riled up by, to not be reactive to things that you can't do anything about them.
I talk about in the book, what you said is, if you're already feeling overwhelmed at work, don't be doom scrolling on social media. That's not going to help the anxiety and the stress. And that's where I help people realize, are you self-medicating? Are you doing things that are not helping your situation? And that goes to self-awareness is, I didn't realize I was drinking so much coffee and it was making my anxiety and stress even worse. Well, duh, I didn't think anything of it until I quit
Yeah.
drinking, triple
Yeah.
lattes 3 times a day, and
Yeah.
that's where people need to realize in checking in with themselves is, what am I doing that could be exacerbating my situation? Am I doom scrolling? Am I
Yeah.
drinking too much caffeine? Am I doing behaviors that are not helping me at work outside of work too? So I
Yeah.
already know that work is stressful, but what can I do outside of work that will be beneficial to balance what's happening at work? So that's why what you mentioned is, it is all encompassing, because
Yeah.
we don't leave work at home and home doesn't leave us at work. So that's where
Yeah.
they're intertwined, and we spend over a third of our lives at work. So how can it not have an impact on us?
And I'm sure there's things, as you mentioned there, like coffee, like social media, that in the moment probably feel like a release. As you were
Yes,
saying, 3 lattes
100%.
a day, I could imagine someone thinking, oh, well, this is, 15 minutes away from my desk. This is a bit of me time.
Yep.
This is something I enjoy, and,
Yep.
all kind of positive things. But it's the flip side of that is that you're drinking, 9 shots of
Yes.
espresso a day.
Yes.
That might not be very helpful.
Yeah, and a lot of it is sometimes you just need to get outside. Like, that's what I talk about, is
Yeah.
get out of the situation. Like the other day, I was just having a really stressful day, and I'm like, I need to go outside and take a walk. I need to get away
Yeah.
from here, because what I'm sitting here is not helping. I'm just getting more aggravated. So I went and did a walk around the building, 10 minutes, came back, and I felt a lot different, because I was outside, anytime you're in nature, it always helps change how your brain is operating. And then just a different perspective, like just getting away from it for a few minutes, being able to calm down and just get in touch with what's really going on is where, and that's what's key, is just being self-aware of what's affecting me right now, and what can I do to make myself feel better.
Yeah. And as you said, that kind of taking a step back and realizing the stuff that you're perhaps even doing by habit, like the
Yep.
coffees, like the scrolling, like the, come in from work, open the fridge, immediate glass of
Yeah.
wine, been there, done that.
100%. Yep.
All of those things that we're kind of
Yeah.
just doing on autopilot a lot of the
Yes.
time without actually stopping to go, why do I feel like I need a glass of wine every time I walk in the house? Like,
Yep.
is that a good idea? And
Yep.
and maybe finding better, more healthy coping strategies than the
100%.
coffee or the wine or the social media or whatever.
No, and I was in that vicious cycle. Like, I'm drinking, grande lattes from Starbucks all day. Now I need to unwind. I'm so stressed out. So, okay, I'm going to have 2 glasses of wine. I wake up in the morning. I'm tired. I'm hungover because, 2
So I
turned to
need more
3
coffee.
or whatever, and that more coffee.
Yeah.
So I'm in this
Yeah.
vicious cycle, and it's not helping the situation at work. Work is already crappy as it is, but now I'm compounding it by drinking too much caffeine and drinking too much alcohol at night, not sleeping well, not eating well, definitely not drinking enough water. So it's just a whole combination of, what am I doing in my life that work is one thing that's bad, but what am I doing that could possibly be compounding the problem?
When you were in that role and before you'd made the decision to leave, were you able to start to implement these things? Were you able to do that in that scenario and start to think, I need to, like, let's step away from the coffee, let's, the things that you mentioned there?
Yeah, I had stopped drinking coffee. I was laid off in March of 2025. So I had to stop the Starbucks run every day, because I started that during COVID. Like, that was my big outing, was going to Starbucks every day. And I think that was for a lot of people. So once I lost my job, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to, come up with another plan, like make it myself or something. So I had actually cut back significantly on coffee before, but then I started drinking it again, even more when I was there. So then when I got in that situation, so then I realized that I need to go back to less coffee and less alcohol at night. But it's just so easy to fall in that pattern, because it's a quick fix for you wanting to feel better. And it does take time. It's not something that happens overnight to be able to make those habits to where sometimes you just got to feel uncomfortable for a while, because that's what you have to do to get through it, is just learn to sit with being uncomfortable.
And I think that's the reality, isn't it? And why we do those things in the first place, because we're not great at that as a
nope.
species,
I want to make it go away, so I'm going to make it go away right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things you talk about, we mentioned self-awareness, that we talked about self-control and just focusing on the things that you can control and not kind of getting sucked into the things that you can't. I think the other two, self-care and how you sort of think about that, and then finally self-empowerment. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about those last two.
So self-care is something that, I mean, you're definitely not taking care of yourself when you're in those situations. I mean, just what we talked about is like that. None of that is self-care. I mean, that's just like making your situation worse. So self-care to me was making sure, am I eating right? Am I drinking enough water? Sleep by far. Sleep will make or break your life in any other area of your life. If you do not get enough sleep, it literally affects every other part of your life. So if there's one thing you can change, I would suggest focusing on sleep and making it your number one priority to find a way to get good sleep, because everything else does not matter if you are not getting enough good sleep, because you end up eating crappy, you end up eating more food because you're not sleeping. Your metabolism gets all jacked up, your cortisol levels get all higher, and that's a stress hormone. So it just makes things even that much harder. And if you're already in a stressful environment, it's even more crucial for you to get a good night's sleep so your body can restore and prepare for whatever's happening the next day. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is focusing on sleep and finding ways to really nurture yourself, like working out, making sure you're working out, get time outside, do things that are something that excites you or you're passionate about outside of work to offset the environment that you're working in.
Yeah, that idea of offsetting so important, isn't it?
Yes.
So that there is there's some light, there's some brevity,
something
in your
to look
day
forward to.
And not just this horrible situation that
and then you go home and you just stew
it
about it all night. So finding something, if you enjoy Zumba or dancing or whatever, something that you really enjoy doing that you can escape from whatever's happening at work.
Yeah. And then tell me about that self-empowerment piece. What does that look like?
That's taking back your power, your energy. That's when you have self-control, because self-control is about being able to control how you react regardless of what's happening around you. And that's where someone has a peace of mind and happiness comes from, being in control of whatever's happening around you. And that's how you become empowered, because you're not giving up your energy. You're not allowing people because basically at the end of the day, you really are the one in charge of how you respond. It's nobody else. It's nobody made you do that. That is 100% you. And that's when you hold yourself accountable. It's actually a form of freedom when you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think it's not.
Yeah, I was going to say, because as you say it sounds like quite an uncomfortable truth that, that actually, the fact that, I don't know, that I blow up when someone's rude to me, or I lose my temper if I feel someone's been rude to me, because, that's on them. They were rude.
Exactly.
Oh, actually, no.
Well, you become the victim
because you reacted. Yeah.
You become the victim when you choose to get up, blame somebody else. You are now the victim. But if I hold myself 100% accountable, like I got upset, you know what? That's on me. And why did I do that? Okay, you know what? I'm hungry. I need to get something to eat. Or I slept horribly last night. Normally I wouldn't react like that. And that's where the self-awareness comes in, is, okay, you are still going to be human and give yourself grace, but recognizing when that happened, why did it happen? So you can recognize, like, okay, you know what? I didn't get a good night's sleep last night. I know I need to be really aware of how I sound and what I'm doing, because I'm not feeling 100%. And that's where self-care comes in too, is giving yourself that grace. Like today, I might not be 100%. I'm here, but I'm just going to be more aware of I'm not feeling 100%. So I'll give myself grace.
Yeah. Giving yourself grace is such, I think, an important phrase. And I think not always the easiest thing to do because
Yes.
I don't know. I think perhaps certainly for kind of our generation, there was very much this kind of just push through it. You know,
No
you're
way.
okay, be
Yeah.
strong. You know, you'll just keep going. You know,
100%.
and actually the
Suck it up,
idea of going,
buttercup.
well, actually, yeah, exactly. You know, I could literally, yeah, I could literally, I can hear myself in my own head saying that to myself in those scenarios, and it's not particularly helpful. And getting to that place where you can just say, do you know what, I actually don't feel great today. I am not going to be like the best version of
Yeah.
myself. Like how can I kind of navigate around that? Or even, you know, just giving that communication to someone that you're perhaps, you know, if you're certainly if you're
Yeah.
in a one-on-one with someone, if like
Yeah.
slightly, you know, not my best self today, just
Yeah.
bear with me. Or, you know, you don't have to kind of fake it in that
Yes,
scenario
and
and pretend
it's
that everything's
actually
okay.
liberating. It's actually liberating,
Yeah.
like because I feel like you're trying so hard to keep it together and keep this
Yeah.
facade up that you're not really being authentic because you want so much to be like, I got this, I'm going to push through.
Yeah.
But when you say it out loud, it's like, oh my gosh, that's such a relief. Like I don't have to carry this baggage around of trying to prove something I'm not
Yeah.
today.
It's so true. And the other thing I think that often happens off the back of that is you then give the people around you this kind of, you know, quote unquote permission to
Yes.
say the same thing. And that's so often what happens, I find.
Yeah.
You know, I say to someone perhaps in a session, I don't know, I've major brain fog
Yeah.
today, bear with me, like
Yeah.
the thoughts aren't coming as
Yeah.
quickly as they would normally be. And the reaction is normally, you know, oh, no worries at all. Like, you know, that
Yeah.
happens to me sometimes too. Like, no problem. And to be fair, often they'll say, I can't even tell. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have known.
Yeah.
Um, and as you say, there's something quite liberating about that. So you're not only not feeling great, but you're fighting yourself to try and
Uh-huh.
fake that you feel okay.
Exactly. Just giving yourself
Yeah.
permission to be human.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're not that great at that
Oh
sometimes, or
no,
certainly we can
no,
be our
no,
own worst enemies in that scenario.
no. We're supposed to just get through this without any emotion.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe I'm just talking to myself there, but that has certainly been true for me. Through this process of writing the book, Terry, I'd imagine it would have been quite cathartic.
A
Did
hundred
you
percent.
find that? Did it
A
help you
hundred
to kind
percent.
of
Yes.
leave it behind and draw a line under it?
Yeah, it's really because it's been almost a year now since I wrote it, and I look at it as that's a former version of me, and
Yeah,
then I've been able to
yeah,
come out on the other side a lot
yeah,
stronger. Obviously more wisdom and definitely empathy and compassion for people that are going through this. And that's another reason why I want to do it is that I hope to help anybody even if it's just one person to let them know
yeah.
you're not alone and that you're being seen and you're valid in how you feel about the situation, regardless of what people are saying, that you are not wrong to feel this way.
Yeah, so interesting. You use that phrase, a former version of yourself. I use that phrase myself
Yeah.
quite often in relation to a particularly challenging time that I had
Yeah.
with illness. So a slightly different scenario, but it's exactly that. I see that actually as a different person. Like I
Yes.
almost don't,
Yes.
not in a bad way, but don't
No.
recognize that person. Even sometimes when I see an old photograph, I'm like, and
Yeah.
my hair is very different. That's not why, but I look at that picture and I'm like, oh, that's me. Like
Yeah.
I sort of remember that
Yeah.
person, but not really. Yeah.
But what's great
It's quite
about it
funny.
is that I would not be here today, who I
Yeah.
am today, if that person had not gone, that former
Yeah.
version of myself had not gone through that. And I
Yeah.
appreciate, because who I am today is because of what she went through and what
Yeah.
she wanted to share. And I'm able to share
Yeah.
it. And another part that's nice about it is that I don't get triggered by it anymore, because when I was writing it, there was a lot of times
I'm
I was
sure.
crying and it was just gut
Yeah.
wrenching to write
Yeah.
some of the stuff and to be I guess, not necessarily vulnerable, but to be honest with myself about how
Yeah.
bad it was, and to
Yeah.
be truthful of, I need to put this on paper so I can move forward. So I'm not carrying this with me
Yeah.
the
You get
rest of
it
my
out.
life. Yeah. And thanks
Yeah.
to her,
Yeah.
what she did, I don't carry that burden with me. And I don't feel traumatized or that I'm a victim in any way, shape, or form.
And the other thing and this is a personal statement from me, but I actually now feel quite positively about the really difficult thing that
Yeah.
happened. Like I actually see
Yeah.
it as a good thing because it changed me so much that I wonder if I would have changed that much had it not been for something that extreme. I don't know
Yeah.
that I would, or maybe I would, but I suspect it would have taken me significantly longer. And I find that
Unfortunately, it
often,
seems like we have to go through these really,
yeah,
really tough times for growth. Growth usually
yeah,
doesn't happen when we're happy because you're in a place
it
that's
really sucks
comfortable.
that, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, I've observed that too when I'm having conversations like this or speaking to clients. It is so often someone that's made quite a profound change in their
Yep.
own lives. It is often off the back of something very difficult
Yep.
that has led to that. And it
Yep.
does seem to be, as you say, I think we as humans need something to kind of jolt us to that degree
Well,
to
if you think about
actually get the
homostasis,
yeah,
yeah, if you
exactly,
don't
yeah,
disrupt that, then we do not
yeah,
change. Like very few
yeah,
people are willing to make a change when we're comfortable. But if you
yeah,
disrupt the homostasis, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable. I need to find a way to get back to there. So
yeah.
I'm willing to do it now because I'm so uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question, Terry, and
Uh-huh.
it's always the final question here, and that is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Oh my gosh, about self-control and self-awareness. Yeah, I especially just being aware, like it's been like I thought I was aware before, but going through this, I have a whole nother level of awareness of, am I part of the problem? Am I part of the solution? Am I willing to be spending my time and energy on things I have no control over? Or am I willing to focus on the things that I have influence over? And if I would have known that before, I mean, I think things would have been a lot different. But if you don't have the self awareness, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Just on that point, I just as you were saying that, I wondered, do you now look back in hindsight and see any of the red flags that were maybe there through an interview process, or were they very, very well hidden, do you
Oh,
think?
Emma, that's the biggest challenge is interviewing is like dating. Everyone's usually on their
Yeah, it
best
is.
behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're amazing. Come and work here.
In fact, I joke in the book about like, these are the real questions I'm going to ask on a scale of 1 to
Yeah.
10. 10,
Yes. How dysfunctional
Zen
are you?
being,
Yeah.
1, a 10 being a star spangled banner of red flags. How dysfunctional would you say or toxic your company is? And, do you have a
Yeah.
mean girls group, or do you have a hazing that people have to go through? Like, these are the
Yeah.
real questions you would love to ask, but,
I
you
know.
can't because they think you're crazy. So I would suggest like looking on Glassdoor, Indeed
Yeah.
reviews. Those really give you, I know there's people that are wackadoodle comments and stuff, but there generally is a grain
You
of truth
generally
if
get a
you
vibe though, don't
start,
you?
if you see a bunch
Yeah.
of reviews and they have a common theme, there is some
Yeah.
truth there. And then maybe just reach out to somebody on LinkedIn that works for
Yes.
the company and ask them,
Yeah.
hey, what's your perspective or what do you think about the company? And, I just
Yeah.
applied for a position, because those are the people that are generally going to give you more of a true
Yes.
perspective of what's really going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And also reaching out to people who used to work there, because that's a really interesting
Yeah.
one. Because, they may have left for, a different role or a
Yep.
very innocuous positive reason,
Yeah.
or they may have left because it was a
Yeah.
really horrible
Yeah.
toxic culture and they didn't want to be
Exactly.
there. And they're more likely to tell you if they don't still work there, I
Yep.
think. But yeah, I think that's really important.
Yep.
But maybe we should start a movement, Terry, for interview questions like that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how toxic is your environment?
I mean, I would love to answer these questions if they probably look at me like I had 6 heads and like, next.
To the going off on a slight tangent now, but to the earlier point about culture is essentially just the behavior of the people that
Yeah.
work there. I think asking more questions around behavior around certain things, the values on the wall say X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z. What does that actually look like day to day? Like, how is that demonstrated by the
Yes.
behavior of the people that work here? And
Yes.
maybe you can't ask some of those. I'd quite like to. Maybe you can't ask some of those
No,
really
no,
blunt
that's a
questions,
really good
but
question.
you
Yeah.
can skirt around the outside
Yeah.
of what does the behavior actually look like. I always think like innovation is one of the ones that often kind of gets put on the wall, but if you ask someone, well, what does that actually look like? Like, what are the behaviors around
Yeah.
that? How are you innovating? If I come up with an idea and go to my line manager with this, hey, I've got this great new, like, what happens? Like, how is that received?
Yes.
I think sometimes that can be helpful.
No, 100%. And those are things that you hope people are honest during the interview process to help somebody like make a choice. Is this a place I want to work? Like, it should be a
Yeah,
win-win. It shouldn't be
absolutely.
someone's
Yeah.
not being transparent and they're deceiving you on what's really going on.
Yeah. I think often the people who are being interviewed, the candidate doesn't always take enough kind of personal responsibility to ask some of those
Yep.
these slightly uncomfortable questions or kind of dig a little bit. I sometimes think we can all just be a bit too nice and go, oh, tell me about the culture,
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're great. Rah, rah, rah. Like they're
Yeah.
not actually,
Well,
they're not
especially if you're
gonna
like, oh
tell-
my gosh, I want this job. I want this job. I want this job. I want this job. I want this
Well, I
job.
think
Like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as you said, it should be, in an ideal scenario, a 50-50. Back to the dating analogy, if you choose each other, hopefully
Yes.
for a positive outcome. Yeah,
So you can get married.
exactly. Yeah, and live happily
Yes.
ever after. Thank you, Teri. Thank you so much. As I said, I actually really enjoyed the book and found it to be, as I said before, not just workplace advice, but very much kind of life advice. And so enjoyed chatting to you.
Thank you. I did too.
Hearing about the positive outcomes that have come out the other side.
Yes. No, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.